The NL still treats the DH like a side hustle. The Pirates, they might not even know they're in business, period.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Pirates. I'm Gary Morgan. Today we continue our positional review series with a look at the designated hitter spot, an AMA on Quinn Priester's development, and a look at how the Royals owner talks to fans compared to how ours hides behind his front office. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So I saved this one for last on purpose, the DH spot, okay? There are a couple reasons why I saved it for last. First is I think it's an uncomfortable conversation about Andrew McCutchen, one that we've already started to have on this show a couple times. One that I think we'll have again before we get to a final decision being made on what to do with him. But also because the DH spot is one of those places where I literally could just go around and name half the team as a potential person that could be the DH. I mean, I've heard some of you say Rafael Flores should. I've heard some of you think Joey Bart should. I mean, there's been plenty of guys that have been named somebody that could be a DH. O'Neal Cruz, Brian Reynolds, the list goes on as far as this goes. So I was hesitant to talk about it because I just think, first of all, it's a black hole. I think there's three paths for the Pirates to look at the DH spot. One, they can bring back Andrew McCutchen and give him the job outright. That's an option, okay? They could use it as a revolving spot for rest days, matchups, platoons, hot hands. You know, I think that's how a lot of teams have kind of gravitated towards using it, especially in the National League, where they've kind of lagged behind the AL in treating DH like a real position. I mean, the AL has a tradition of the designated hitter, so they've long since considered it something real. You know, that the National League, it's kind of like a catch-all for if you struggle to field or something. It's an oddity still almost in the National League, if that makes any sense. It doesn't get the same kind of I have to fill this position. It's literally one spot in my lineup every single day. And it's the only one where you don't have to worry about, getting anything in the field out of. But I think DH is a strange spot too. Only 6 dedicated DHs in all of Major League Baseball hit over 270 this year. DH kind of used to mean also best hitter. It was that's all this dude was, as an assassin. It almost didn't matter what he did anywhere else. Just going to hit. 270 is now a high water mark. Just 7 hit over 24 home runs. It's kind of become a power spot, if anything. You treat it like a place where you can tuck some home runs for free. But other than that, a lot of guys are treating it as a committee. And the other way the Pirates could go, I mentioned too and kind of got derailed. I apologize. They could sign a dedicated DH with real power and consistency. They really could. You could look at a guy like Nick Castellanos has fallen out of favor in Philly a little bit. That's a guy you could probably plug in. It's an instant upgrade at DH. He's not a good fielder. He has the capability, though, so you have the flexibility to dump him out in the outfield if you really just want to get a rest day for someone else or whatever. But that's kind of what a ready-made DH looks like. And I'm not saying that he's not just as close to the end of the road as Andrew McCutchen is, but I'm saying there's very few regular, designated hitter types out there. The Pirates may need to go and find one. I think I would probably advise going with like a round robin, almost a committee on designated hitter. For me, that would be the ideal situation, if only because the Pirates have so many question marks. I think I'd almost want to leave room for detours, and I think that's what leaving the designated hitter spot a little more open would do. Now, there's a couple ways you could go about doing that. One, you can just not bring back Kutch, leave it a completely gaping open hole. It's not what I would advise, but it's something that you could do. You would just completely leave that open. Whoever wins the playing time wins the playing time. Whoever gets the at bats gets the at bats. You're happy as a clam because you're moving your lineup around and making things work. You've got a variable in there that you can always play with. But the other way they could go, if they wanted to keep Kutch, is just get Kutch, convince him that he doesn't need to have more than 400 at bats or whatever. Continue to use that spot kind of like a revolving door. If Kutch gets hot, by all means, use Kutch for 10, 12 days in a row, whatever, till he cools off. Then sit him, go back to what you were doing. Be adaptable. That's probably my chief point here with the designated hitter. If you're going to want to use the designated hitter spot in a interchangeable fashion, or you want to be able to drop guys in or rest guys here or spell guys for a couple days here or keep that hot bat in the lineup and use the spot, that requires a little bit of flexibility, right? That's a little bit of a we're gonna not stick to a rigid plan. Well, in order for that to be the case, the whole team has to change their philosophy that they've had for years and years about kind of scripting out rest time for guys. I think we may have seen the end of that with Derek Shelton's exit, but I need to be sure. So I kind of need to get into next season and see if I see it completely gone. It may not have been something that Don Kelly wanted to do, and maybe they didn't even have the personnel that they were necessarily as worried about. Like Brian Hayes was a guy that had that requirement to keep the back right. I think Brian Reynolds should probably have some of those considerations too. The shoulder problems that he went through for the better part of 2.5 months this season, I've come to find out, they probably should have addressed differently. They probably should have rested him more. And I don't mean like he should have still been playing DH every day. That was a lot to ask of him. For real. I think they really should have done some better things there. Kutch got very frustrated during that stretch of time because he was sitting while Brian Reynolds was playing DH because there was no option there, and they're playing Kutch here in the outfielder. Well, the way Brian was hitting, the stubbornness of not sitting him a little bit or dropping him in the lineup or whatever and moving Andrew McCutchen in, regardless of what you're trying to do with Brian Reynolds, always bothered me. Always felt like sticking to a plan as opposed to being a little bit flexible. This isn't working the way we hoped it might. We're not able to mask this injury the way we hoped we could. Let's adjust on the fly. Let's use the DH role a little bit different. That's all. If they're going to keep it an open mind thing and you're just going to let players float in and out of that spot and nobody's going to try to take ownership of that designated hitter spot, or just remember that Andrew McCutchen, when he first got here, he talked about the different skill set that he had to learn as it came to being a designated hitter. It's not the same as playing games in the field and staying engaged that whole time, and you're always got your pulse up, you're ready to go because you're playing a game. When you're a DH, you're sitting on the bench. You got to know when to go down the hall and start getting your swings off. You got to know when it's time for you to amp up. it's more difficult than even pinch hitting, which is very difficult. And some guys can do it and some guys can't. So if you're going to go with a revolving door there, you're probably going to always have diminishing results, aren't you? You could name half the roster as potential DHs. You sure could. And they could go by committee. You're right when you say it. That's not a strength, though, to me. That's indecision. If they don't commit to something at DH, I think they're going to keep getting committee level results. If you do go by committee, at least narrow the committee to a select few. And if you're going to go with Kutch, at least be real with him about what you may or may not do with him. This has got to be it with this Kutch discussion. I do think cooler heads will prevail, and they'll both come to the same decision that Pittsburgh is probably the best place for him, and that he probably should be thinking about this being the last year for him. But I think he's probably uncomfortable with the extra attention, too, if you know the truth. He loves you guys. He loves the fans. But I don't think he wants all that praise just for stepping on a field all the time. It made him uncomfortable even when he came back to Pittsburgh at first. Yeah, he had the tearful moment. But after that, he wanted everybody to just shut up and let him play baseball. I think that's what he's going to do, even if he's going to retire after this next season. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, it's time for a really good AMA. It really got me thinking. And current events kind of made this an even more interesting question. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Go Long. That's exactly where Rugiet Go Long comes in. It isn't just another ED pill, it's a total game changer for confidence. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. Ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to rugiet.com and use promo code LOCKEDONMLB for 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com, Rugiet. Promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Make sure to use our code so they know we sent you. Hey, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Make sure you smash that subscribe button and hit me with a like. Loved all of your comments. I am gathering them up. I'm going to give you guys a little bit more time to let that episode soak and come up with some of your suggestions for people that we could pick off of the non-tender wire. And I love some of the suggestions that have already come in, and I'll definitely read some of those. Hit me with some more, and we'll do even more of them in Friday's episode. So, great AMA. You guys know I love these. Did the Pirates do anything wrong? Of course they did, but did they do anything wrong with Quinn Priester? Or is his recent success just a case of change of scenery? Different voices are finally buying in. So I'm going to answer this, obviously, and I am not going to allow his disastrous playoff outing yesterday of 0.2 innings, 2 walks, 4 earned runs cloud the analysis, okay? It was just one game. The bigger picture is about development, philosophy, coaching, consistency, player adaptability, and all that. So let me try to clear my head and not picture what I just watched, because honestly, he looked so out of sorts. It actually reminded me, for the first time, really, that I've seen him pitch this entire season. It reminded me of Quinn Priester when he was a Pittsburgh Pirate. Definitely did not have confidence in a lot of the pitches he was throwing. And it's just the polar opposite of what he has been and really laid down on paper this whole year. Let me start by saying I always believed in Quinn Priester. I always thought he was going to wind up making it in this league. I didn't know if he'd wind up being a starter or a reliever, but I had a good feeling that he'd make it. He has enough pitches, and I felt like he had enough of an arsenal that if he was going all out, balls to the wall for an inning or two, I thought he could be very effective. And that was worst case scenario, I thought. That said, I guess maybe I don't know if the Pirates did anything wrong per se, just because like Quinn Priester winds up doing well elsewhere. I don't look at it like that. I look at it like, well, what have we been screaming at the Pirates about doing? Trade pitching depth for offensive help, right? And maybe there wouldn't be a question like this if, say, Nick York had made the team out of spring and contributed pretty heavily to the Pirates this season, maybe sitting on 10, 15 home runs and 260 plus average somewhere in that. Maybe you're not necessarily worried so much about what you may or may not have lost with Quinn Priester. Now, here's why I don't believe that to be true with much of this fan base. Well, look at Spencer Horwitz. Statistically speaking, the Pirates' best hitter this year. Really? Look it up if you don't believe good old Gary sitting in his hotel room. I think people are still upset that they traded Luis Ortiz because he was okay-ish before he got busted for gambling. The good chance now that he never throws another pitch for the Guardians. Now, I told you at the time of the trade that I was much more concerned about Michael Kennedy, who was a prospect that was dealt in that move. But I'm getting derailed because you wanted to know about Quinn Priester. Listen, Quinn threw too many pitches, and the Pirates let him throw too many pitches for way too long. And then on top of that, they made him focus on one of them that honestly was his least successful offering. The Pirates and Oscar Marin, and maybe this is, hindsight, maybe this is at least a part of why he fell out of favor, to the point where if you believe like players were just like, I don't like daddy, and they fired the coach, that's not what happened. And Jason Mackey would tell you that too. And I know where that report came from and everything, right? But Jason Mackey would even tell you that's taking it a bit far. This was more of like a factor in it was that players were not entirely happy with how they had progressed. But something Oscar Marin was kind of guilty of an awful lot was preaching the virtues of the high fastball, the high four-seam fastball. And it makes a lot of sense, and it's been going around Major League Baseball. It's a philosophy that launch angle has made catching up to high heat very difficult. So if you've got a guy that has really good extension and or the appearance of a rising fastball, which doesn't really exist, it's physically impossible, but it looks like it is, and you can place it near the top of the zone, there's a good chance that you're going to get a lot of pop-ups or strikeouts, or at least weak contact, shallow fly balls or whatever. So there's a good theory behind it. But listen, some guys they're not comfortable throwing it. And Quinn Priester was one of those guys who just was not comfortable throwing it. Now, do I think it was a mistake for the Pirates to try to force him to throw it? No, not as a young kid, I don't. And not with the success that Oscar Marin had seen other pitchers have taking this exact approach. Okay. Now, there comes a point where a coach and a team has to recognize this guy doesn't like this or whatever. But here's an approach I think I would have liked to have taken with Quinn Priester. He was much more comfortable throwing his two-seam fastball, and he still is. In fact, that's a lot of what his success is coming from. But if you watch it and you listen to what I just spat out of my mouth about Quinn Priester, you're going to go, but Gary, he's still throwing four-seam fastballs for the Brewers too. You're damn right he is. You're damn right he is. Now, why is he so much more comfortable throwing it now? Because the Brewers are the first team that allowed him to just throw his two-seamer as his bulk fastball. Okay? That's his bulk fastball. A two-seamer low. Well, what does that do? Keeps the ball in the ballpark. Keeps Quinn in the strike zone. Keeps Quinn centered on everything else. And what does it do more than anything else? Gives him confidence to throw that four seam that he knows people aren't sitting on. So did the Pirates do something wrong? Yes. But so did Boston, right? So Milwaukee was the one team that was willing to take the strengths that Quinn Priester was showing everybody. He didn't just develop these pitches, everybody. He had these pitches. He had a lot of these pitches when he was here. Quinn Priester was a good pitcher. He had a nice arsenal. Again, I truly knew they were trading talent when they traded him, and I have absolutely no spilled milk feelings about this. That is a reality of running around crying about needing to trade pitching for hitting. You're going to miss some of that pitching, and you're going to miss on some of that hitting. It's going to happen. I don't cry about it because I want them to try it again. You get what I mean? I think you have to keep doing that. But Quinn Priester found himself in a great situation with a wonderful organization that is very, very good at letting people be the best version of themselves. Look at what they just let Mizorowski do in the playoffs the other day. You know, they're pitching him out of the bullpen, but this is a young kid. You know, they want to protect the arm and everything. What did they let him do? Go out there and throw 104 gas like 4 times in a row, throw over 103 miles an hour. I think they said almost 20 times. Listen, they're just letting guys do what they can do. That's the difference. Oscar Marin had a philosophy and an idea of how he could mold that talent into a pitcher. And I do believe that had Quinn bought in entirely on that four-seam fastball, he probably would have had a entirely successful career here in Pittsburgh. That's part one. All of that answer is part one. Part two is look at this pitching staff. Again, I'm not sure that anybody, including the Brewers or the Red Sox, thought Quinn Priester was up for what he was about to deliver in 2025. The Pirates certainly didn't. And when I stack him up against some of these other prospects that were coming like heat-seeking missiles, even right now, we're having a hard time filling out this 5-man starting rotation without knocking 2 or 3 guys we think should be in that conversation out. You want to add Quinn Priester back in? I think there's a reason that they felt comfortable doing it. They felt like he was a little bit more of a project. And under Oscar Marin, he absolutely was. Turns out under the Boston Red Sox, he absolutely was. The Milwaukee Brewers were able to turn him into something. More likely, more accurately, they were able to allow him to just be what he was comfortable being. And then work back in that other stuff that they think is important. Different philosophy, different strokes for different folks. But man, most of what the Brewers are touching lately turns to gold, doesn't it? When we come back, I want to talk about the stark difference between 2 owners in Major League Baseball. Or maybe not that much of a difference, but the fan reaction, I bet, is a little different. There's nothing like catching a baseball game live, the energy, the crowd, the chance to see your team in person. But actually getting tickets, that's the tough part. Queues, login screens, surprise fees. It takes all the fun out of it. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives you the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by a Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. The app makes it super simple. You can even see the exact view from the seat before you buy it. And I already mentioned it, but it's super important. Know your total up front. The fees are included with no surprise fees at checkout. Download Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Hey, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. I'm trapped out here in the desert of Arizona, and it was 101 today. I'm in my hotel room in my hoodie right now, but only because, man, I turned the air conditioning down to like ungodly temperatures because I felt like I was in the sun. That was not fun. And also, there was a WNBA Finals game in town last night. I had no idea, and I ordered DoorDash and felt like the biggest asshole ever as this poor soul is trying to fight through this mass of humanity who was exiting this game on the way to bring me my food. Anyways, let's talk a little bit about ownership here. The Royals owner, John Sherman, put out a little statement. He spoke openly and candidly about Payroll. He said it's in a good spot. His GM added that it's plenty and it's their job to make it work. And I just want to contrast that a little bit with kind of what we've been treated to here in Pittsburgh. And keep in mind, I'm not pointing to the Royals as some fantastically well-run organization. I'm certainly not pointing to the Royals as a team that spends enough money either. They do try. I mean, they've got some players and they are spending money and they have made some trades and they're attempting to put together a team. But Nutting didn't say anything himself. He sent Ben Cherington and Travis Williams to deliver the message. Oh, and by the way, mark themselves safe from the great purge of 2025. And even then, they couldn't do it right. They said they needed to make a good bet on players, and Travis Williams guaranteed a playoff berth. Listen, man, a good bet on players is not confidence. That's hedging. Royals fans might not love Sherman's message, but at least he owns it. At least he friggin' said it. Pirates fans get deflection and vagueness from a third party. It's one of the many reasons why trust is so damn low here. That and trusting our eyes and what we've seen. But the Royals are in the same exact boat as the Pirates. Yeah, they've got a generational talent offensively, but the Pirates have a generational talent pitcher, right? So 1 for 1. They've got a great veteran leader who's probably over the hill a little bit in Salvatore, Perez, and Pirates got Andrew McCutchen. Listen, tit for tat. Young players underperforming, attempts at free agents and trades underperforming. There's a lot of similarities, and the market sizes are very, very similar. The Royals are the only example of a team with a payroll, I think, under top 15 that's ever won the World Series, since, it became a thing in 1992 to be able to outspend teams as drastically as they do now. But I respect an owner that's going to come out and tell me to my face what's going on. And I respect their GM for what he said. It's enough, and it's my job to make it enough, basically. I don't hear confident statements like that. I hear confident statements from Travis Williams, and he has absolutely nothing to do with putting a team on the field. I don't know. I don't know how in the world he's the one predicting a playoff appearance for this team, but I know that I complain about the communication level on this team, and I talk about how piss poor it is, and it is in general. It's probably one of the worst things about doing Pirates coverage is that you kind of can't believe almost anything that the team itself tells you. There's always some kind of misdirection. Like if your next door neighbor was David Copperfield and every day your rake went missing, I think you'd start to point fingers, right? Well, every time something happens with the Pirates, the first thing you're doing is looking for the trick. It's your default. I don't know what the situation is in Kansas City. I don't know how fans reacted to those statements from their owner. All I can tell you is that if I got those statements from my owner and my GM spoke in a fashion that made me feel as though not only did he have enough, but he was putting it on his shoulders that he needed to make it enough because it's his job to do so and he was capable of doing it, I think I would feel a lot better than two guys that I kind of wanted dismissed coming out telling me they're safe and then telling me, oh, by the way, we're not going to spend a whole lot more. We're just going to do better. And it's going to be enough. That's all you need to worry about. So many times I feel like the Pirates go out of their way to tell you how smart they are and how well run they are. And I often remind myself that if you're really competent at something, the last thing you need to do is tell people how competent you are at it. That's kind of where I land on the Pirates and their communication. But I would have just appreciated an approach a lot more like what Kansas City did. Again, fully acknowledging that fan base could not agree with or believe anything they say just as much as we Pirates fans are in a situation. The DH spot is a microcosm of how the Pirates operate, non-committal, reactive, and often behind the curve. Whether it's McCutchen, a new bat, or a rotating cast, the decision will say a lot about how serious they are about competing. And when it comes to ownership, fans deserve clarity, not coded language and proxies. Till next time, we're serious about Pirates baseball because somebody has to be.